Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Keck, and this is All Things Fantasy Football. Back after a couple years hiatus, decided to get a couple videos out next couple days. Today, we're going to do the DRF preseason rankings, as we have just finished our auction portion of the league. So we have done now both the rookie draft and the auction part. So the teams are complete. Everybody's at their 25-man roster limit. All roster requirements are met. Everyone's underneath the $215 salary cap. So now we have our teams that we will go into the season with for week one. So we're going to count down the teams backwards from 14 to 1. And we're going to do a little preseason rankings and discuss some of the moves that people have made in the offseason. So without further ado, let's start right up at team number 14. We're going to go with stop order, Ken Bond's team. Probably the biggest reason for this is going into the auction, there was no team that had a bigger hole at quarterback than this one. And he had the money and he had the player sitting there. Kirk Cousins was available. Kirk Cousins now in Atlanta. Otherwise all he had on his roster was Levis and Daniel Jones. And if you want to compete, if you want to try to win, you're not going to walk into the season with them as your top two options. So, for him to not to even really go after Kirk Cousins, really put a damper on their chances of having a good shot at winning this season. Instead, you let him go to Edlinger's team, who definitely didn't need him, but he spent the $35, and that's all it was $35. You would have pushed Edlinger a little harder. You probably would have bailed at some point. You had the money. And then when you look at who they spent the money on, Cam Akers was $20. Rico Dowdell is $34. Maybe he's worth it, but I mean, Cam Akers, I'm not sure I'm spending my money there, especially at a spot like quarterback is your weakness. He's got Pacheco and Kenneth Walker on the roster, so he didn't really need either of those two other running backs. That's $54 that he could have easily plugged into the Kirk Cousins lottery and walked away with him. Other than that, I mean, you could have walked into the season with Jalen Waddle, Rondell Moore, Jaden Reed as your options, and run a couple of receivers, and you'd have been okay. You've got George Kittle on this roster. Zach Charbonnet's on the taxi squad. Someone else who's going to get a lot more looks this year. So there was options there. He did add Sam Howell, and now that I look at it, I've got to take Sam Howell off his roster to begin with anyway, because he overpaid the quarterback position. He has 4 of them on his roster now, so Sam Howell's going to have to get cut. So stop order, I don't think did a great job to compete this year. The good news is he has his draft pick next year. So 14, we have stop order. At team 13, I have Jared Barton, Show Me the Money. I don't think he intended to compete this year anyway. I think he's got a lot of young players, a lot of draft picks coming up in the next couple of years. He's got 2 quarterbacks on his taxi, and Bryce Young and Jaden Daniels. He's rolling with Geno Smith. I mean, he did have a lot of money to spend and did spend it on some decent players to you can tell he's not going to fold right off the get-go. He's got Zach Moss, went out and got Ezekiel Elliott, Alexander Madison. He went out and spent some money on those 2 players. Odell Beckham he got in that auction. So he went out and spent a good chunk of money. I just don't think this team is ready to compete as of yet. There's definitely some young talent to build around in the future. Got some guys sitting on his taxi in Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Brian Thomas Jr. So he's got some guys that he's just going to wait and see, put on the wait and hold mode and see how it goes. I don't expect that he expects to win many games this year. So, I think he built a team to try and compete. And when that doesn't happen, these players will probably get, sold off to competitors or contenders if it comes to the point where they're actually feasible options for contenders to use. So I got Show Me the Money at 13. Probably should have been at 14, but the whole Kirk Cousins things made me drop stop order down to 14. So up till number 12, We have Silliman left the league, so we have Giles coming in with the Pittsburgh Feelers. And the only reason I ranked him here probably is because he's new to the league. There are some pieces in this team that are fantastic pieces to build around. He's got C.J. Stroud. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown, which I don't expect either one of those two to leave his roster. Jordan Addison is on this roster, another great piece. Did well in the draft. We got Tony Pollard, got a Donnie Mitchell. In the auction part here, we were able to get Elijah Moore and Trey Sermon, who could definitely be some plug-and-play pieces. Jared Goff's on this roster, so the team has definitely some pieces in play. I don't know that it's going to contend. Maybe it's a borderline playoff team by the season's playoff deadline. We'll see. Cortland Sutton's also on this roster. Forgot to mention him. So there are some pieces here. Just rank him a little low based on, I don't know how active Giles is going to be. I don't know how, is he going to put in his lineups and stuff like that. So until you know a player and how they're going to compete, you don't know what to expect from them. So I'm hoping for the best. So for him, I think this is a team that you can easily turn around in a year or two and be a contender. So I have Pittsburgh, assuming that's going to be his team name. That was Silliman's name. Pittsburgh coming in at number 12. And coming in at number 11, we have Chaos, Farrell's team. Farrell's team's just getting old. He's got some of them guys that are just getting old. I still think he can compete. I still think he's got some guys that can turn it on for this year. Just when's that cliff going to come? When is the cliff going to come that he's just, and going to drop straight off? He's just got some guys getting old. Aaron Rodgers. I'm hoping Aaron Rodgers has a good year. I've got him in a couple of Dynasty teams that I'm trying to hope he rebounds, has a good year. Justin Herbert's been beat up. Not even sure he's going to be ready to go at the start of the season. Austin Eckler's getting old. Derrick Henry's getting old. Who else on this team? Adam Thielen's getting old. Mike Williams never stayed healthy, so you might as well say he's getting old. Deebo Samuel's still holding in there. Marquise Brown now in Kansas City. Those are good pieces. Got some players, but you don't know when that cliff's coming. So got him ranked down here at 11 based on, guys just getting up there in age. Auction time, he only had some dollar players to get, and actually got a couple good ones. Got Dawson Knox. Was able to get Jacoby Brissett, which I think will probably be the day one starter for the Patriots. And let me say, there's not much else. There wasn't a lot of money to be spent, so there wasn't a lot of players to be had for anybody when you're searching for those dollar gems. Did get the Chargers defense for $1. I think that'll be a good play for him. But like I said, this team is one of those ones, could be a fringe playoff team. But if that cliff comes, then it could be a dive right over it in a hurry. So Chaos coming in at number 11. Coming in at number 10, I have the Motor City Machine Guns. Probably the lowest preseason ranking I've had LeRon in this league since we've had it. Not saying that I hate this roster. He's just moved on from a lot of players. Looks like he's trying to get younger in some aspects. Made some different moves to try to get rid of some of his elder vets and get a little younger, and not quite sure where this team sits. So Brock Purdy's the starter for him. He's got Caleb Williams at backup. I love Caleb Williams, so I just don't know that I want him as my backup quarterback without a third one, and he doesn't have a third one, so that makes you a little nervous. Joe Mixon off in Houston. Devin Singletary out of Houston, over to New York. Those are his two top running backs. I definitely like Joe Mixon. Devin Singletary is kind of a wait and see how he plays out over there. He's got Nico Collins, T. Higgins, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Those are probably his top wideouts, and I think it's a fall off from some of the wideouts he's had in the last couple of years. So he tried to get some pieces to go around him. Rashid Shaheed might be a play for him. He definitely went younger with some guys like Parker Washington, Malik Washington. He did pick up Chase Claypool on a flyer. So he went with some flyer guys, and he's trying to fill the gaps around the other ones. But it's definitely a down team from what his team has been as when it was a championship team and when it was in the running all the time. So Not saying this team can't compete, not saying it won't, especially with the way LeBron is. He's always making moves, always trying to do something. So definitely in there for something that could happen. He's got some guys on his taxi squad that could be moved up by the time the season gets rolling, once they get rolling. So he's got a lot of young guys. You can tell this is in a real rebuild mode while keeping some of his good pieces. So doesn't have quite the championship team he's had before, but it's a team that definitely he's not giving up on the season week one. So the lowest I've had him, number 10 preseason, Motor City Machine Guns. Number 9, Belichick yourself, Depew. Depew was all done when it came to the auction. Didn't even need a player. Kept everybody that he was going to keep. Was $13 under the cap and said, I'm good the way I'm at. So ended up getting Drake May in the auction. Perfect, sitting on his taxi squads. Got Tua and Russell Wilson. Those guys will carry him throughout the year. Gets Jonathan Brooks in the rookie draft to go with James Cook and DeAndre Swift. Also has Khalil Herbert in there, depending on whether he gets traded or even as an RB2 in Chicago. He's definitely got the backup in case Swift goes down. Wide receivers, I've heard great things about Cooper Kupp in the training camp, saying that he's the guy again, and he's looked the best he has since 2021. We'll see if that translates to on the field play. But if that does, he's got Gabe Davis, who's definitely taking some reps now up in Jacksonville. So you got Gabe Davis, you got DK Metcalf. So he's got 2 or 3 receivers to plug with those good running backs. So he's got a nice starting lineup. And then you've got Jake Ferguson as your tight end. So team that's good, fringe playoff team again. I think there's not a lot of depth here as far as great starters, but he's got a lot of youth that's up and coming. Also, you can't count Rashee Rice out. You got Xavier Legette in the rookie draft. So clearly in a rebuild, and he's doing a very good job at getting some of them young, youthful players to go with him. Also got some great guys on the taxi squad. I've heard lots of good things about Will Shipley. So keep an eye on him coming up in the next few games. So coming in at number 9, we got the Belichick yourself, Chad Depew. Number 8, we have the River Rats, St. John's, and that's Paxy's team. Paxy, let me see, I gotta get this out of my way. Paxy has Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, made a couple off-season moves, got those guys at quarterback there. The big question mark for him is a couple of the running back spots. Nick Chubb coming back from that bad injury. Is he going to be the same player that he was before? Dameon Pierce, now is not the starter anymore. So how much play is he going to get as the RB2 and probably a split backfield? I'm sure they're not just going to stop giving him the ball. It'll just be more of a split backfield type thing. And David Montgomery, who I still love, even though they got Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery is still going to get a whole bunch of carries and a whole bunch of goal line work for the Detroit Lions. So some good running backs if the play works out. Could be just David Montgomery if Pierce isn't getting his play and Chubb isn't what they expected him to be. So I guess we're going to have to see how that plays out. At wide receiver, got Scary Terry McLaurin, and that's pretty much the main guy for you. But then you've got a lot of guys that are contributors, maybe not solid number 1 guys, but you've got Jahan Dotson, Tyler Lockett, Jamison Williams, a lot of young guys in Roman Wilson, Malachi Corley, and Quentin Johnson, who didn't get a whole lot last year, and they're liking him in training camp. So he's got lots of guys. He just needs 1 or 2 of them guys to hit. Got the River Rats at 8. Like I said, mainly because of got good quarterback play. Got Travis Kelce at tight end. So those 2 things will help him carry the rest of the roster while the roster figures itself out. And Paxi normally makes pretty good moves to get him in a good spot. So have him as a fringe playoff team also. So I have the River Rats coming in at number 8. Next 7 teams are what I consider the playoff teams. And if you're paying attention to who's been said so far and who hasn't, I guarantee this top 7 is probably going to surprise you a little bit. So at number 7, I have Bergie's team back that pass up. as much as I thought Bergie's team has fallen off a little bit in the last couple of years, he did a really good job in making some trades. And you still got Josh Allen at quarterback. He's still the QB1 in fantasy. Patrick Mahomes QB1 in the NFL. Josh Allen's QB1 in fantasy. So right now, he's still that guy. Even if he doesn't have the greatest receiving core to throw to, he's still going to run the ball when he doesn't have those guys to throw to. Then you look at the running backs. He's got Ramondre Stevenson, Rashad White, Gus Edwards, now the main guy for the Chargers. So those guys, Keaton Mitchell is a nice transition tag for him, and even Zamir White. So he's got some good young running backs, even though Gus Edwards isn't all that young, but some good young running backs to build around, and you don't have to play all those because he actually has some decent wide receivers as well. Excuse me. And Michael Pittman, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin. Then you even go to Christian Watson, and even Darnell Mooney now in Atlanta with Cousins, Jerry Jeudy in Cleveland. So he's got lots of options. And then there's always the potential of a couple other guys hitting, like a Romeo Doubs being the number one. We still don't know who the number one in Green Bay is. And Treylon Burks, as of right now, he looks like a bust, but you never know. And when he's your wide receiver, like 7, you can afford to just keep him on your roster. He's got Michael Wilson on his taxi squad, which I think might be the wide receiver 2 in Arizona. And then at tight end, you got Dalton Schultz. So I think this team is a playoff team still, especially when Josh Allen's going to carry you, and the roster will figure itself out. It's not like he only has 5 guys that are going to score. He's got like 7, 8, 9. He's just got to figure out which ones are the best ones to play. And I think Bergie will figure that out in a couple weeks. So number 7 was back to that pass up, Bergie's team. I got future DRF coming in at number 6, Shane Peterman. Shane's got a couple quarterbacks in Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson. Not the greatest options, but Baker definitely made a splash and made a return to the NFL in explicit fashion, coming back and actually blowing it out, bringing Tampa to the the playoffs and everything last year. So who knows if he can keep that going? Baker might be the guy for him. Deshaun Watson was injured. Hopefully we can get a season out of him. I've moved on from him in a couple of leagues just because I didn't want to have to deal with the headache. But that's what he's got, and that's what he's going to have to roll with. He's got Aaron Jones and Javonte Williams at running back. Those are the 2 guys he'll probably use the most. He did take some flyers on Dalvin Cook and Kareem Hunt. He's also got Jalen Warren there as well. Took some flyers on Cook and Hunt. Neither one of them are on a roster at this point, but it was worth taking those flyers, and took them late when everybody had no money, and he had that extra couple bucks, so he was able to take the chance on those guys. In hopes that they land somewhere due to an injury or just, a chance to get some yards and stuff in. Long gone are the days when Kareem Hunt was being offered for 4 first-round draft picks. So I remember at one point that I offered that. So that was a long time ago. Mike Evans is at wide receiver for him. Drake London, Puka Nacua, Devontae Smith. Definitely got a lot of wide receivers here. DeAndre Hopkins, even once he gets back from his injury. So this team definitely has some players that can put together a nice lineup. And I said the quarterback is maybe the weakness at the position. He's got Cole Kmet at tight end. So the weakness is definitely quarterback, but I still think it's a playoff team. Some of these other guys are going to put up real good numbers. Mike Evans has been amazing, especially if you're playing Baker and Evans. You get that little double dip. So number 6 was future DRF. Number 5, and I almost hate doing it because every time I do it, something bad happens to his roster. I got Garrett's Motorboaters, who's a one-time defending champion 2 years ago. Got him at number 5. Quarterback, he's got Dak Prescott and Anthony Richardson, both considered. Anthony Richardson's actually considered a higher Dynasty quarterback than Dak Prescott is. Probably not, for our rule purposes, but he's, if he stays healthy, he definitely could be in that wheelhouse. He's got Bo Nix on his taxi squad. Nice place to have a quarterback like that. But he's still got them running backs that he's drafted when he had the #1 pick multiple years in a row. He's got Breece Hall. He's got Saquon Barkley. He's got Travis Etienne. I mean, that's 3 first-round caliber running backs. So it's hard to not rank Garrett with especially when he's got an Anthony Richardson who's going to get a lot of rushing touchdowns. It is hard to not rank him in that position, to have those 3. He's got J.K. Dobbins, who's a Charger too. We don't know if J.K. Dobbins is going to be anything, but if he's anything, then that's going to fill in on some bye weeks for him. Jamal Williams in New Orleans, picked him up in auction. So those are some great running back pieces along with that quarterback that's going to make it hard for him not to be a playoff team. He does have a weakness at wide receiver. He drafted Xavier Worthy in the rookie draft. He's probably going to walk right into a starting role for him because there's not a lot on the plate for them. If Zay Jones picks up in Arizona and becomes the wide receiver 2 there, he might be the guy. But right now it is going to be Calvin Ridley is that main wide receiver for him, especially with DeAndre Hopkins injured. So it's Calvin Ridley and Xavier Worthy, or maybe a DeMarcus Robinson. He's got both those guys. So that is definitely the weakness for this team. It is hard to find another wide receiver beyond those ones that are going to do any kind of contributing for him. Might even have to go double tight end, as he has Evan Ingram and Pat Freiermuth and Juwan Johnson, who he was able to pick up in the auction part. So he's got three decent tight ends. So maybe he has to go double tight end at some point if the receivers aren't working out. But the running backs and that quarterback, and along with Calvin Ridley, is going to carry him. You'll figure out the weakness. Maybe pick up a free agent along the way to fill that other spot. So that's our number 5 team, Motor Boaters. Number 4 is Nate Jones, straight out of Tomlin. Nate's definitely got a weakness, and it's at the backup quarterback spot. It's got Lamar Jackson, and then after that, it's Justin Fields and Kenny Pickett. Neither one of those are starters at this point. Lamar Jackson's bye week is week 14, so by that point, Justin Fields may very well be the starter in Pittsburgh at that point. He may not be, but at that point, week 14 is still our regular season. You might take the L, something, make a trade by then or something like that. But the rest of the roster is pretty good. At running back, he's got James Conner, who continues to be a top 10 running back every year, even though nobody drafts him as such. Alvin Kamara is looking lights out in camp, and they're expecting him to be a top 3, top 4 running back this year. Najee Harris, you got 3 guys you can plug right off the get-go and start in at running back. And then you look at the wide receiver spot, and he's got like 4 or 5 guys. He's got Brandon Ayuk, who very well could be a Steeler by the time this video gets posted. Stephon Diggs, now with Houston. Deontay Johnson, now with Carolina. And George Pickens with Pittsburgh. So Brandon Ayuk going to Pittsburgh might hurt the receiving core a little bit, because then he's going to have both Pittsburgh wide receivers. So maybe that's not the ideal landing spot for Brandon Ayuk. Fantasy-wise, I'm sure Nate would love to have Brandon Ayuk on the Pittsburgh Steelers, though. And, on top of that, he's got a couple other guys that are, Mac Hollins in Buffalo. Buffalo's going to be looking for targets now that they don't have Stephon Diggs. Got Juju Smith-Schuster, not on a roster at the moment, but could end up somewhere, and we'll see what happens there. So he's got some other options, but overall it's a pretty deep team to go with Lamar, who's one of the top fantasy quarterbacks every year. So I think this is a playoff team. You look at the tight end, he's got Sam Laporta, top 3, top 4 tight end, depending on where you want to put him. Kansas City kicker. I think this team is going to be a playoff team. And on top of that, he's got Rome Odunze on his taxi squad. So that also makes the future look a little bright for him as well. So number 4, straight out of Tomlin, Nate Jones team coming in at 4. And number 3, the highest that I think we've ever put this team in the preseason poll, I got Wiggins coming in at 3. It has been a long and hard rebuild for this team. He wrecked it and then wrecked it some more, and then all of a sudden said, "Hey, got to find out the way to do this." Sat down and figured out, and finally has put together a pretty decent team. Jordan Loves is going to be a starting quarterback, and with Derek Carr as his backup, got Michael Penix on his taxi squad, which is perfect. Perfect to have that kind of player there where you roll him with Jordan Love. Jordan Love was going to be a top 5 quarterback last year for counting his last half stats. Even if he regresses a little bit, if you get a top 10, top 12, perfect starter for the amount that you're paying him. But then his running backs, he's got Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams is a top 3, top 4 running back last year. Perfect 1-2 combination. Then he's got Brian Robinson, Samaje Perine, and Tyler Algier as some perfect little plug-and-play backup filler spots for him. So definitely I like the combination of Jacobs and Kyron Williams. I think that's going to be a very deadly combo, and it's going to score a lot of points for this team. Then you move to wide receiver, and he's actually absolutely loaded at wide receiver. Keenan Allen, certainly to regress when he's playing with DJ Moore and playing with a rookie quarterback. But he has Tyreek Hill as his number 1. He has Garrett Wilson as his number 2. He has Marvin Harrison as his number 3. So, Keenan Allen's your number 4. Keon Coleman's your number 5. Brandon Cooks, number 6. This team is absolutely loaded at the wide receiver position. I think this team, you got 5 or 6 good receivers, 2 or 3 good running backs. He's going to be able to bounce, lineups even when he's on bye weeks and stuff like that. I think this is a really good roster, and I definitely think it's a playoff team. Tight end's questioned because you're rolling with Brock Bowers as your starter. You do have Tyler Conklin for the Jets, which, with Aaron Rodgers, you never know, but Aaron Rodgers never really hits the tight end all that much. So I guess we'll have to see there. But Brock Bowers supposed to be good, and if he's half of what they say he is, he's going to go lights out. He also has Michael Mayer, so he has both Raiders tight ends on his team. But better to have them both than to have the wrong one. So at least you got that going. So if it's Mayer coming out off the get go, Bowers will sit for him for a bit. But one of those guys should be able to boom for the Raiders. So I think Wiggins is going to be a playoff team this year. I think we're used to him being the doormat, and I don't think that's the case anymore. So I have Wiggins coming in at number 3 this year on the preseason poll. At number 2, I have Noel Edlinger. Champ is back. Edlinger had a strategy, and he said, "I'm going to get Kirk Cousins, and I'm going to make Bond pay for him," and Bond didn't pay for him. So Edlinger added Kirk Cousins to go with Mahomes and Stafford. So, he's definitely got a great quarterback room. When somebody gets an injury, he's probably going to be the one that they hit up first. Depends on if you want to pay his price. But yeah, he's going to, likely start Mahomes most of the year unless Kirk Cousins lights it up or Stafford lights it up. Excuse me. But Mahomes is a great starter in fantasy every year, so it's a staple on his roster and has been for 7 years now. So wide receiver at running back, the room's a little thin at the running back position for Edlinger, and it's hard to see anything past A-Chain as a legitimate starter. He's got guys that he's hoping can take a hit or something. He's got Mozart. In case Mozart's the main guy, but there's not a lot here. There's not a lot of points. If you looked at the point totals that are sitting in front of me, you got A-Chain with 173 from last year and Mozart with 250, and there ain't another running back on his roster that has more than 33. So there's not much here. And the other 2 that are there are both from the Dolphins. He does have on his taxi squad, he ended up getting Jalen Wright and Marshawn Lloyd in his rookie draft, and then traded for Kendre Miller for New Orleans. So he's trying to fix that. throughout the throughout the draft, which is what you're supposed to do. And I think he's doing a good job at that. It's just nothing is there at the moment. So until something hits, he's definitely going to count on that running back from Miami, whichever one it is, maybe both. Last year it was both, but if that's not the case this year, he'll run with whichever one is that guy, and probably run just a whole bunch of wide receivers where he is stacked. So he is very, very stacked at wide receiver. That is why he's up this high, that along with a quarterback play. So going with basically the zero running back, or you call it the hero running back. That they call it a hero running back, where you have a top 5 running back along with a bunch of wide receivers. And that's more along what he has. So when you look at his wide receiver core, he has Jamar Chase, Chris Olave, Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper. So he's got a bunch there, and then he's got a couple sitting on his taxi squad, which I don't think are going to stay on his taxi squad for very long. And that's Malik Neighbors and Ladd McConkey. I think those will both be playing maybe by week 2. Maybe by probably not week 1, because he's probably got a good enough lineup to not have to play them. But I think they're going to be good enough to come off. So he's got 5, 6, 7 receivers or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 receivers that are worth starting to go with that 1 to 2 running backs. Great quarterback play. He ended up getting 2 good kickers in the auction. Ended up getting a good. He has the good defense in the Dallas Cowboys from last year, so they're going to put up points. So this is definitely a playoff team. Those wide receivers win the games, and he's definitely going to contend for a title this year. So he'll be up in the fight for it along with everybody else, like he is every year. So Champ is back, coming at number 2, and the number 1 team. I mean, not that I'm being biased, but until you beat the man, you're not the man. So right now, my Chicago Fire team is coming in at the number 1 team. I have Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray at running back. Was able to pick up Gardner Minshew real cheap as a QB3 option. So that'll be a nice third option in case of an injury, or in case somebody wants a trade that needs a quarterback down the stretch that isn't as expensive as some of the other options. So those are the 3 quarterbacks I have. Definitely, as long as the tush push is legal, Jalen Hurts is still good. I think Kyler Murray rebounds, has a good year. Running back wise, Christian McCaffrey is still the RB1 until otherwise. I don't know that I'm ever going to trade the guy. It's probably he'll hit his cliff. We were talking about earlier, when old guys hit the cliff and just fall off, they're just done, and he'll probably be done at some point, but he'll still be on my roster when that happens, because he is a guy that catches a lot of balls, and maybe along the same lines as Eckler, or Eckler is seeming to slow down. That's probably what's going to happen at some point with McCaffrey. I just don't know whether that's going to be this year, next year, or the year after. But until further notice, he's still the RB1. He's still going to be on my roster. Plugging around him, I've still got 3 other super, super talented running backs in Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor, and Bijan Robinson. That's a great running back room. I could start 2, 3, any 2 or 3 of them, and then just add a couple receivers and be very well off. Added Jordan Mason for the Niners in the auction, just to have a potential backup. He may not be the backup, but a potential backup. He got some time last year when McCaffrey was out. And then I added Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because you never know. So I mean, as of right now, he's another one that has been a bust. We drafted him high. He was drafted number 1 at one point in our rookie draft. He's been bounced. He's been cut. He's been re-signed. So, he's just a flyer at best. At wide receiver, the best wide receiver room in the league, with Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and A.J. Brown, as well as DJ Moore. Those 4 are stellar. Got a couple on the taxi squad in Troy Franklin and Jalen Polk. I think both those guys will be pretty good down the stretch as well. Not much else on the roster. I added a couple guys in auction that I don't think very highly of. I doubt that I'll ever play. Ray McLeod for Atlanta. You never know. Trenton Irwin, probably not. Nelson Aguilar, fat chance. So probably never going to play. I do like Khalil Shakir on my roster. I think he has a potential, but again, he's going to be at best wide receiver like 6. So nothing spectacular as far as that. Pass should get past them top 4. And then we're not really sure about how the depth is after that. Tight end, another great tight end room. Trey McBride, Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, all fantastic, all great starters. Andrews had a little trouble staying healthy last year. Kyle Pitts finally has his quarterback, so no more excuses after this year. You either put up or shut up at this point. Trey McBride, I think, is still the number 1 option on my roster. Picked up Jatavian Sanders for Carolina in the rookie draft, so I like that as well. Also, another running back I have is Trey Benson. He's sitting on my taxi squad as well. We'll see how much he gets playing time, behind James Conner. So we'll see how that develops. But overall, a very, very good roster. Got the Bills defense, which has been phenomenal over the last couple of years. So that's a good defense. Colts kicker, Bills kicker, either one of them. Nothing spectacular in that regards, but you got to have your weaknesses somewhere. So that's the number 1 team going into the season that everybody's going to be chasing. Defending champions from last year. Only took me like 6 years of a rebuild, but we got there. So let's see if we can put a second one together and put back-to-back wins up. So those are the rankings. To recap, we're going to go down from 1 to 14. We have Chicago at 1, Champ is back at 2, Wiggins at 3, Straight Out of Tomlin 4, Motorboaters 5, Future DRF at 6, Back That Pass Up at 7, River Rats at 8, Belichick Yourself at 9, Motor City coming in at 10, Chaos 11, Pittsburgh at 12, Show Me the Money at 13, and Stop Order rounds it out at 14. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It has been a while, I know. Been real busy, but since I had some time off, I figured we'd put a preseason video together, and I hope you enjoyed. Let's get the season rolling. Trades will be opening up tomorrow, so let's have a great season. I will talk to y'all soon. Hopefully, you can get a couple more videos in this year. Have a great day. For all things fantasy football, I'm Richard Keck. See ya.